All right, guys, we're going to be reacting to Jay Dyer and Andrew Wilson go off on Tommy Laren, Destiny, and St. Ewer. Thank you so much for the support, guys. We're getting simply jump in to see what's going on here. Let's go.
The first thing I'd like to talk to Andrew about is maybe on this topic of boomers. And I don't want to, again, I'm not saying that boomers are bad, inherently evil, or anything like that, but I think that there's just a sort of a bubble that they get in that they don't realize that a lot of things have already shifted. We're already seeing in the debate world, for example, things shifting. We didn't used to have debate on TV. The thing I can think of is like maybe in the 80s there was like these William F. Buckley 70 show in the 1970s. There was Buckley, they would have these sort of debates with him and whoever else that was supposedly on the left. But now we sort of see the resurgence of debate. And one thing that I think Andrew is really good at, not just debating, but really being with precision, honing in on topics that people assume without questioning. And that is, in one case, the issue of rights. I know that Andrew's had debates with people like Tim Pool and Dave Smith and others, where it gets into this issue of libertarian rights or rights theory. And Andrew, why is it that you think this is so effective in terms of getting people to question what they mean of when they speak of their positions being based on rights?
So, first of all, thanks for having me, Jay. It's been a long time coming that I came on and did this show with you, so I appreciate that very much. Jay's also completely correct. He's been out there stomping the guts out of progressives and atheists and everybody else for years. I've been watching it with great interest. We do run in some of those same circles. So anyway, thank you for that. Moving into the rights argument. So the reason I like to hone in on this idea that rights are a figment, at least how we perceive them in the term of positive and negative rights in modernity, they're a complete fiction. They're completely made up. They're a product of the mind. What I'm trying to always do is force a person to evaluate this so that they understand that if there are indeed rights, if that is something we can come to, then they're going to have to be divinely grounded, or you're not going to ground them at all. It's not going to be possible to ground any type of right, period, unless it comes from the divine, and that's it. And Tim Pool fell prey to this, like many, many other prominent libertarians like Dave Smith ended up having to essentially concede. But if that's the case, and it has to be grounded in God, then that must mean that we have to follow his laws too, right, Jay? So if we have rights which are grounded there, then you're making the concession that God is real, right? He must be, because you believe in these inalienable rights which are given to you. So how come we can throw the rest of it out? Why is that allowed?
Yeah, I noticed too, not just with libertarians that maybe are more on the conservative side of things, but when you've debated even the more radical progressives and the feminists, they also tend to appeal to this amorphous idea of rights, and yet nobody really seems to ever explain what a right is, or how it is, or where it is.
Well, I'll explain.
And this is crazy. Before Andrew come in and start cooking, I used to be one of those weird libertarian conservative kind of guy that used to think that no government is better than nothing kind of thing, right? Which is not true. It's not true. The reason is that you still need enforcement to even apply these libertarian ideas, guys. Now, I do believe a very small government, in the sense that it has to be efficient. Make sure it's in a surplus. Make sure we keep things, we make sure that there's not a lot of spending in the government, but not to the point that's almost eliminated. Also, the concept of force is something that it just clicked quick to me. If the force in itself, which is necessary to protect these rights that we know is a social construct, is weak, that means that you as a nation, as a population, is in a state of danger. Why is that? Because another force that's stronger than yours can come in and take you and say no to those rights. Like that. We saw in World War II when the Germans just invaded Poland. Poland didn't have... You think when the Germans came in and invaded Poland, you think that they were really thinking about their right? No. A major force came in and invade another country because their own force to maintain sovereignty and law was weaker. And this is where the conversation on feminism come into play. And hear me out. if we allow females to enter the Force Doctrine philosophy, that means that the force to apply and protect those rights becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, to the point of what? Oh, lawlessness. And we see them already in some of these big cities. Seattle, Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C., just all female. Cincinnati, female. Their inability to even protect those rights or even protect the law become none. So it's crazy, right? The concept of force is very interesting.
You just think it is.
Yeah, I'll explain what a right is. A right is a figment of your imagination, which was completely and totally made up, and it's used interchangeably with what is actually true, which is force. Yeah, every idea that you have, secular idea that you have of rights, is actually just an appeal to force. You have a right to a gun. You have as much of a right to a gun as you have force to protect your right to own one. You have as much a right to speech as you have force to protect this right to speech and every other right thereof. And it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, right? Every right is going to be an entailment of force and what I could call force doctrine.
Correct.
An appeal to men to force people to do the thing that whatever the social paradigm requires that they do. And any right that you would appeal to, whether it's a human right, a natural right, whatever it is, if it's not divinely grounded, then you just made that shit up. You just made it up out of thin air. And if you make it up out of thin air, then I can make up all sorts of rights too. Like I have a right to kill you. I have a right to eat your child. I have a right to beat you to death. I can make, as long as I have the force requisite for that, I'm in good shape.
Right. Now, keep in mind, we're on radio too, so be careful with what words. It's okay.
Gotcha.
But remember too, on this topic of rights, and I really like the way that you elucidate this idea of force doctrine and how it has to be enforced, because I think people don't even think about the fact that when we live in Western free markets and freedom-based societies, and people think that, well, I'm in the West and my feminism is something that I get as a right because I'm a woman and the government gives me these rights. What would you say to a feminist or somebody on the left who argues that the rights that they have come to them because the government has given it to them?
Then they're making my point for me. What they're saying is that they have a right to do whatever the government is willing to use force to allow them to do. And that's it. It's that simple. Feminists have no force to do anything. All they can do is whine. All they can do is whine and complain. Right? They have to appeal to men.
They did it already in Roe versus Wade. Basically, the court said, hey, this is unconstitutional. There's no basis for this. The women, what they did, they just started crying and whining. And I think a lot of people are catching up to this. They notice nothing happens because they have to rely on men to just enforce those rights. They have to appeal to men, guys. That was the missing part. 2000s, early 2000, 2010, 2012, that was the missing part. People were just doing pickup artists, doing red pill content, a lot of this stuff. But we were missing something. Concept of force. This is the nail on the head. This is the hammer hitting the nail on the head. If you understand the concept of force, all concept of feminism just go right out of the window. Because feminism needs to appeal to men to enforce those supposed rights.
To utilize force to give them whatever rights they want. How can I demonstrate this? Let's look at most of the world. Most of the world, women have no rights. And who can they appeal to for them? Only to men. Only to men. They can never appeal to themselves. There's never been a single instance, not one single, and I've looked through the entire historic standard, all recorded history that I can find, I've never found a single instance of women overthrowing the chains of oppression by force. They've never done it even one time. They always have to appeal to men. And this is what force doctrine is stating, is that really, for feminists and for women, their rights are actually just granted to them by men. That's actually what's going on. Men are granting them their rights, and men can take those rights away. So you better hope that men appeal to the divine for the grounding of these rights, because if they don't, what's to stop us from putting women in cages and having our way with them however we want and doing whatever we want? What's to stop us from doing that? Secularists and humanists have no answer for this.
Yeah, their religion, their worldview, even though it's irreligious, it's a-religious, actually is a kind of religion that the more consistently it's played out actually leads to brutality and leads to tyranny. And this very force doctrine that you're talking about, people don't even think about how, the supposed rights that you have as a feminist, you're only allowed to have that because society allows you to have that with this force doctrine to go after somebody if they trample those rights. So laws have to be backed up with this force doctrine as you're talking about.
Well,
I think that
and
most
they
people
have to
just
be
think,
backed up the other way too. So remember, men uniquely are in a position to throw off any chains of conditionals they don't like collectively with force. Men can do that and have done that. We did it in this nation. We've done it. I mean, all throughout the historic standard, if men find themselves in conditionals they don't like, they literally just kill everybody until they get to the conditionals that they like.
They literally just throw the government out. That's what they do. We tried it here in this, we did it twice. We did it in 1776, right? That's when we declared the independence from the British Empire, right? And we did it during the Civil War. Basically, men didn't like that. Men didn't like the deal that they were getting, so they decided to say, you know what? After this, we're gonna declare a war against the federal government. We're creating our nation, and we're okay confronting that with what? With force, guys. That's what it is. They were okay confronting those things with force. Like, force is the thing. Like, that document, even the Constitution, guys. I'm in Twitter and I can see conversations now. People say, you know what? Throw the Constitution away. We need to just kick a lot of people out of this country. Because, people get to the point, it's like, man, the Constitution has been already just mishandled, misinterpreted. Like, a lot of this stuff, might as well just throw the entire thing away, man. Which I don't think is a good idea. We should just be truthful about the Constitution. Make sense about these things. The Constitution should only just apply for American citizens. But somehow we have these pseudo-politics ideas about things, right? And only those pseudo-politics ideas are only valuable if there's force behind it. That's it,
That's
guys.
actually what they do. But women can't do that. They not only can't do that, but they have to rely on men to enforce that on their behalf. So it sounds like men should really be getting the big piece of chicken here. You're right. They should really be getting a little bit of due and respect in society for the fact that we're so benevolent. And by the way, I think if the sex has changed, it wouldn't be nearly as benevolent. If it was the case that women suddenly woke up tomorrow collectively and they were 2 to 3 times stronger than men, I don't think they would be nearly as benevolent towards men as men are towards women.
Correct.
Yeah, no, these ideas are pretty kind of earth-shattering when you begin to really think about it, given the paradigm that we're in. Mm-hmm. And some of these debates that you've had have been pretty feisty, pretty spicy. People should go and check out, for example, the Tomi Lahren exchange that you had, or the Cenk Uygur exchange that you had. Do you see any commonalities with the talking heads and the sort of empty, vacuous, ungrounded worldviews that they argue for in terms of these exchanges and what we're talking about with
yes, they steal from Christians. They steal from Christians across the board. They steal their entire worldview from Christians. They steal all forms of benevolence from Christians. They steal all the good stuff. And then they just want to add all the degeneracy in there. They want to sprinkle in the degeneracy while justifying it through our worldview. That's what's so crazy. They have no grounding foundation for anything. Tomi Lahren, for instance, told me that women have no duties at all to men. No duties at all. Crazy. Only men have duties the opposite direction. And by the way, Jay, we're born to have those duties according to her, right? So according to her, and feminists like her, what men are is they're disposable income wallets. We get to pay for everything for women, but don't worry about it, Jay, because we get to watch them enjoy them spending all of our money, right? That's how we're apparently hardwired according to these people. But yes, they steal the Christian ethical worldview. That's what they do. All their concepts of harm, murder, theft, everything, totally stolen from us. All of it stolen from us. And then what they do is they sprinkle in degeneracy as a new form of harm. If you don't let us be degenerate, that's harming us. Therefore, Christianity bad. It's the most convoluted and corrupted worldview that I've ever seen, and it's grounded on nothing. It's literally built on a house of sand. They can justify nothing, and they never have been able to justify anything.
Yeah, I think the most kind of surprising exchange that I saw you have was with Cenk Uygur, because I thought at least he would bring some kind of leftist talking points, some kind of socialist argumentation, and all he did was like cuss you out and go after you personally. Really, I think showing that guy's
that show you that a lot of these people were just protected. They never had, have this. They have the skill of debate. When you get to the nitty gritty, if you're on the side of truth and your position solid, the only thing that they can attack is your character. And that's what you notice even with Tommy Lahren.
Completely vacuous, completely bankrupt, no real, intellectual backing behind what he's saying at all. And that seems to be kind of a pattern of what you and I both see in a lot of our debates, is that these people are kind of like shells. They're really kind of fraudulent. They don't really have much behind them other than rhetoric.
Well, let me ask you a question. This is what I found from doing, I think at this point, several thousand debates with everyone, high profile, low profile, random people on Discord to Twitter, just like you do, right? What I found is this, is that when you're talking about the liberal paradigm, the progressive paradigm, everybody operates within it. But the second you don't grant it, you say this worldview, I'm not playing within this worldview, I'm playing with a different worldview, they're lost. They're done.
Yeah.
You have to actually, the only way that these people know how to communicate is if you already accept their preconceived notions of progressive and liberal worldviews. And if you don't accept those, they're totally lost. Like if you started a debate, for instance, with a progressive and you said, I'm going to come at this from a totally fascist worldview, right? Or something like this, which even that I would argue is still a liberal worldview in a sense.
Right.
But the thing is like the second you move outside of their paradigm, now suddenly the things you don't think they think are bad or not bad to you, the things they think are good or not good to you, all justification falls out the window. In other words, much like a vampire, you have to agree to invite the worldview in. Right?
Yeah.
Or else it doesn't do anything. It does nothing. Right? It does nothing. It falls flat immediately.
And not only that, if you don't know what you're doing, right? This is why they get paid their big bucks, right? If you don't understand these kind of tactics, you're gonna end up with these destiny kind of debates where you're just moving the goalposts thousands of miles and you don't get to the point. Then you're jumping from one topic to the other, and then you give the perceived notion that you're winning a debate, but you? It's like a little, like a spell, right? They do like a spell during the debate, where you feel like, oh, okay, this person, this liberal, is making sense, but it's not really making sense. Just manipulating your emotions. Then what happened is days after you start realizing, oh, those arguments were not solid arguments, right? And this is where the Andrew Wilson comment, a lot of these folks, so Jay Dyer come into play, where they need to be tough on this, and that way they can just cut through those weird tactics, if I may say.
Another one of the characters that have had quite a few interactions with, I've been blessed actually to not have any interactions with this person, is Destiny. What would you say about this figure? I mean, I don't understand why he's so popular, other than that he talks really fast and kind of pushes, I guess, degenerate ideas. But what have you noticed from your debates with this guy?
Well, Destiny was there first. He started at Justin TV before it became Twitch. Because he was one of the first doing what he was doing, he was able to accumulate a large audience. If Destiny came around today, I'm not even sure he would dispute that. But if he came about today and moved into this, kind of ethosphere, he would be probably a low-level streamer. So, but if you're there first, as you know, generally speaking, you're able to kind of consolidate an audience, and he was there first. Now, as to his continued rise in popularity, he's dealing with all sorts of legal troubles at the moment. He's dealing with all sorts of different things, but he is an A-tier debater, or S-tier debater, if you want to say it that way, on the left side. And the reason is he's really good at memorization of talking points, and he's really good at regurgitation of them in a very quick way. However, when he goes up against people who are more in the logician form, he begins to fall flat. He avoids debates with those people generally like the plague, and he'll do this through the proposition itself by saying, well, look, I'm not going to agree to a proposition which can be falsified through logic. So what these people like to do is they like to argue only within the paradigm of regurgitation of talking point. My paradigm right, your paradigm left.
And that's it. Whoever does the best sparking, I will say, wins the debate.
Talking point, your talking point, my talking point, your talking point. The second that's rejected, the second you're like, these talking points are nebulous and stupid and have no logical sense to them at all, these people fall apart. Destiny's no exception to that.
Interesting.
We're talking about this beginning of the end, I would say, of the normie libertarian sphere of the alternative media. People are beginning to look for more than just more rights, more freedom, more whatever I want to do. They want authenticity. They want to be grounded in something historical. Andrew, are you beginning to see the weakening and the questioning of the libertarian ethos out there 100%. In the zeitgeist?
Yeah, so I have an analogy for this. I say, look, there's a sword of power, let's assume. The libertarian and the Christian, they're arguing over who should be able to wield it. The libertarian says, in my paradigm, you're going to be allowed to be Christians. And the Christian says, in my paradigm, you're going to be allowed to be a libertarian. And by the time they're done arguing, the liberal has already taken the sword of power, cut them both down, seized complete control, and that's exactly what they did. The thing that's interesting here is that
because the libertarians have been arguing this since the 1970s and 1980. Milton Friedman, you said Milton Friedman, the Thomas Sowell. Although I agree with a lot of their points, but that's what happened. At that point, the liberals already took control of the schools and the institutions, even the political power. While we were just talking about pseudo politics topic and stupidity, we got to the point that the liberals went in, took church, took God, took your capitalist mindset, libertarian mindset, put it all in the ground, and they put their own religion. That's what they did, and that's why we're in the position that we are right now. And worst of all, we never developed strength and mental fortitude to go against what we believe. A lot of very weak Christians, a lot of very weak apologetics, a lot of weak, and a lot of white guilt as well. A lot of white guilt. And that really destroyed the country.
Libertarian philosophy and progressive philosophy, both of them bank on a truism of the world that Christians have forgotten. We've had it beaten out of us. Politics is about power, and that's what it's about. And if Christians are not in power, then they're going to be ruled by people who are in power, who aren't Christians. And that's that. Now, you've made a good point of pointing this out many times. So have I. Guys, even on the Catholic side, like Nick Fuentes, he's pointed this out many times. If we're not in charge, somebody else is in charge of us. And
that's my fear, guys, right there. That's my fear. And you know what I'm talking about. I want to just get too much into the details of it because of the sensitive notion of the topic, but that's right there. All the system, all the pseudo politic talking point, the Constitution, Article 5, and this line instead of the comma, a period. None of that stuff is gonna matter if you get replaced with something else. They're gonna use that system of power to put you in the minority situation, and that's one of my fear. Imagine, just to put it light, you have 5 Muslims as in the Supreme Court, Orthodox Muslims. All of a sudden, you have a case, let's say, Nick against the state of Idaho. Nick says that, he can stand up in the public side and just say, hey, I love Jesus. The state of Idaho, since it's already majority of Muslims, said, no, you're not. We're going to put you in prison. And all of a sudden, the 5 Muslims agree with Idaho. Doesn't give a damn about the First Amendment. What are you going to do there? Now the Constitution is going to protect you? Think about it, guys. Think about it. You think the police and the military is going to say, you know what? We're not going to enforce the law. They're going to put you in prison. People have to understand this is more than just documents. This is more than just reading law number 1 or Article 5. This is more than just reading the Constitution, First Amendment. It's more than that, guys. If the cultural landscape is not congruent with what was founded, you have no country. It's going to be just conquered by somebody else.
Let's not pretend that libertarians aren't trying to be in charge. At the whole time, they're leading the charge, saying nobody should be in charge except us. Progressives are saying the same thing, but Christians have been so beaten down, we have forgotten that we need to be in authority in order for us to push our messaging out there and in order for us to have a just society to begin with, instead of letting other people rule over us. And by the way, the point of my debates, all of them, is to point out that secularists have no more, there's no more reason for them to be in power than Christians. They have no greater justification than a Christian. Even if everything Christians believe is completely false, the secularist still has no more justification to be in power than us.
Full point. There you go.
I think you're in a unique position, maybe beyond anyone else out there.
All right, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. This will be a very interesting conversation. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with my take on this? Do you guys disagree with my take on this? Let me know in the comment section below. I will see you in the next one.